if you steal an item and change it, it's called a shinoi. There's two types of shinois. A shinoi that can be returned to its original form, or a shinoi that can't be returned to its original form. So you have a log, you steal a plank of wood, you turn that plank of wood into a chair, so that chair can't be turned back into a plank of wood. So it's called a shinoi, so it's a change that can't go back to its original form. But if you take that plank of wood, you build it into a house, so it could be a supporting beam in the house. Now, even though it's a shinoi, it's not worth the 5 shekel in the store. It's worth a lot more, and you're still able to. I guess it's not called a log; it's called a support beam, or it's called a house. You're still able to get that log back by destroying the house and taking the log out. At the Raisa, only a shinoi that's chayzer le that she'ena chayzer le briaso is called a shinoi. There's any change that you make that it can't go back to its original form is called a change. But if it can go back to its original form, so the Raisa is not called a change. So this is a Konos Rabbanan. So the case would be where a guy steals a plank of wood, he builds it into his house because he's a thief. Then he wants to do Teshuva. So he goes to the rabbi and he says, "I'm a thief. I stole all this stuff." So the rabbi says, "Well, anything that's left you have to return, and anything else you pay the money." So he says, "Listen, I've done everything but or if I do everything, there's a plank of wood I stole. It's in my house. Do I have to pay the money? Can I just pay the money for this beam? 10 shekel for the beam, or I have to destroy the house and take it out and give it?" And he goes, "No, Daraisa, you have to give back the beam." So the guy's like, "Well, I'm not going to. It's too expensive to do teshuva. It's not worth it. I'm going to lose my whole house. I'm not going to bother doing teshuva, and therefore I'll just stay as a Russia because it's too expensive." So the Rabbanan were mitakein that even if it's a shinoi she'ena chayzer le briaso, that you can still, it's enough of a shinoi. It's called a shinoi, and therefore you can just pay the money. That's not for every case. It's in certain cases. But there's so basically so Rabbanan, even if it's a shinoi she'chayzer le briaso, it can still be called a shinoi. So we have the same thing by Teshuva. The Rambam says that Teshuva is where you have the same woman, the same time, the same place. So you can't have a case of where a guy falls to a woman in his youth when he's 18, and then when he's 72, he's offered the same woman when the woman isn't as attractive and his drive isn't as strong. That's not the same test. So even if he passes when he's 70, it's not really the show of the real teshuva, because he wasn't in the same test. He was a completely different test because his desire was less and her attractiveness was less. So you have to be in the same, the real teshuva, you're in exactly the same test, and where you failed you now pass. And one of the Farshim explained that was what Yosef was doing. As if he just revealed himself and they said, "We're sorry," that's a level of teshuva, but it's not teshuva shlema, where you're in the same position. And there's an idea where you have teshuva shlema. There's a bigger kapara where than if you have you just say you're sorry, I'm not going to do it again. Again, so a lot of the tests people have had, they're not going to get them again. If you're in certain areas and certain things and living a certain lifestyle, then you just change your lifestyle, you become a frummy and go live in Meir Sherim, you're not going to be getting a lot of the tests which you've had before. And Gemara is quite clear to not go chasing after these tests. But Lamaisa, Teshuva Shlema, is where you have the same test, and when you failed before, you pass this time. So that's real Teshuva. Meaning that when you take on a Kabbalah of "I'm not going to do it again," you actually aren't going to do it again. However, there is a type of Teshuva where you say, "I'm not going to do it again." It's not that you're saying as a game and like a trick, but taka, at that time you feel regret. You feel that I've done the wrong thing. I shouldn't have done that. Like eating, like getting drunk and feeling bad. So I'm not gonna drink that again, or having a huge meal and feeling sick. You're like, oh, I've eaten too much. I'm not gonna do that again. They're real thoughts. It's just, oh, you get hungry again, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna order 20 burgers again. But at the time of when you have decided that you're not going to do it again, it was a real thought. So you have the two types of teshuva. The teshuva she'eina chayzer lebriaso. You have the teshuva that's a real teshuva, and you're not going to go back to the way it was. So you've actually made a real fundamental change in your life, that you're not the same guy, and if I was tested again in that area, I'm not going to fall. And you have a shinoi shechayzer lebriaso. You have a shinoi, you've made a change. You'll go back, and right now, I'm not going to eat again. I've stopped my face. I'm not going to eat again. And then, I get hungry again. Oh, you know what? I'm going to eat. So, Deraisa, you could say, the taka is not called Teshuva. The whole din of, I do a sin, I'm not going to do it again. I sin, I'm not going to do it again. I sin. Are you doing anything with that, or just a game? So Deraisa, the Yemislav, could say really the whole thing is a game. The Rabbanim were metakin. Shinoi, Shechayzer lebriaso is still called the Shinoi. That's still called Teshuva. Therefore, the Teshuva that's made, even if it's going to go back and you're going to fail again, it's still called Teshuva. So on a Rabbanim level, it's still Teshuva. And that anything you do, or you say, you make a commitment to do something, and even if later you fail in that commitment, it's still, so Deraisa, you could say there's no commitment. But the Rabbanan, you still committed yourself to that, because it was real. At the time which you committed, it was real. It's just later on, things changed. Either your desires changed, or the information changed, or how you understood things changed, and therefore you've changed what you were doing. But the rabbinical takana of Shinoi shechayzer lebriaso shemei shinoi is that the teshuva shechayzer lebriaso shemei teshuva.